This is my first ever Mac. This MacBook Air was the first Mac that I ever bought. So I'm sure you can guess that I've got a soft spot for MacBook Airs. I've had Intel, M1, M2, and M3. And yet this year, I decided not to buy the M4 MacBook Air. No, this year I decided to buy what I actually need and not just go chasing the latest and greatest chipset for no real reason. And the last thing I need from my M3 MacBook Air is even more power. It's got all the power I could possibly want. So let's go through my thoughts on these M-series MacBook Airs and help you possibly buy the right Mac. And also I'm going to tell you about the two things that had Apple included on the M4 MacBook Air would have made me switch. I'm David, and this is D Talking Tech. The main reason that I decided not to buy an M4 MacBook Air was because there was nothing really compelling. There was nothing drawing me to it. The old me from a year ago, I know I would have done it, but now I guess just a little bit wiser. I look more closely at the specs and try to think, am I going to get value for money? I work just as hard as you do for my cash that I'm going to buy these Macs with, and I need to know that I'm getting value for money. I'm going to get something extra, something better for changing and buying a new Mac. And nothing was convincing me there was anything new that I really needed from the M4 MacBook Air. These are some of the best value laptops, full stop, that you can lay your hands on. And just to prove that point, for instance, last year with the M3 MacBook Airs, they started at the 13-inch with 8 gigs of RAM for £1,099, whereas this year, that same 13-inch M4 MacBook Air now has 16 gigs of RAM and came in at a cost of £999. So they are good value for money. Apple has never been in the bargain basement game, but these are as near as a bargain, a true bargain, that you're going to find from Apple. Now, other than the memory, what else did we get from Apple this year? We got a better camera, but the resolution is still the same as the M3, as the version I've got. So the webcam wasn't going to be that much better. And no matter how you try and dress it up, webcams on any MacBooks have never been very good. I don't like the colors, they look too saturated, and I always end up using a webcam anyway. So the camera wasn't going to make me change. You've got better bandwidth for sure, you've got more CPU, you now get 10 cores rather than 8, and you've got a quicker neural engine. And now you can also spec these MacBook Airs with up to 32 gigs of memory. And if you've watched any of my videos, you'll know that I've always said the only pinch point with Apple Silicon is the memory. So that's great, but is 32 gigs of memory on a MacBook Air a little bit overkill possibly? It now can support 2 external displays with the lid open. So in total, you've got 3 external displays you can use. It's got the same GPU architecture as last year, the same Wi-Fi, and the same video decode engines. There's just nothing really there other than new color, the blue color, that was new about these MacBook Airs. Nothing was really making me feel that I needed a change. The I/O is still exactly the same. You've got MagSafe, you've got the 3.5mm headphone or speaker or the audio out jack, and you've got 2 Thunderbolt 4 ports. But that's all you get. Now, I use my MacBook Air at the desk a lot, so it didn't take long for me to start looking for I/O solutions that would help make me more productive. And that's when I came across this, the Fusion Dock Max 1 from Avunki. I've been using this Thunderbolt 4 docking solution for over a year now, I guess, and it's honestly the best dock I've used. Firstly, I love the style and design of it. I mean, just look at it. It's gorgeous. It's built like a tank, has a feeling of quality to it, and was specifically designed for Apple Silicon MacBooks. Small details like this beautifully designed cable that not only connects the Fusion Dock, but also keeps your MacBook charged, I love. There were a few must-haves that any dock had to have to increase my productivity, and the first of those was Thunderbolt 4. I use the Max 1 with both my MacBook Air and MacBook Pro, both of which are Thunderbolt 4 Max. I edit all of my videos and podcasts using Thunderbolt 4 external SSDs. So Fusion Dock Max 1 fits perfectly into my workflow. And even under load, this thing has never got worryingly warm. It's got some kind of funky cooling inside, and it's clearly working. Some of the other docks I've tried have got hot, I mean properly hot to the touch, which can't be good for the internals, can it? Now, another thing I've grown to love is the 2.5 gigabit Ethernet port. As you know, the MacBook Air doesn't have an Ethernet port, but I always prefer to be hardwired if I can. The SD card slot, I use that every single day. And that's the thing with this Fusion Dock Max 1. The more I've used it, the more reasons I find to use it. As much as I've tried to swap everything over to USB-C, some of my audio interfaces are still USB 8, so those ports get used heavily too. Like I said, a year in and the Fusion Dock Max 1 is performing like new. Class will always last the test of time. And Avunki has now released a Thunderbolt 5 docking solution as well, with transfer speeds of up to 120 gigs per second. There's a link in the description where you can check out these docks yourself and help unlock the full potential of your MacBook. but I just wanted to give you some context, some numbers. So I put together a very simple little 10-minute multicam video clip in Final Cut Pro to export. I'm going to export it on the M3 MacBook Air, an M4 iMac, which has got 16 gigs of RAM, and also off my M4 Pro Mac Mini. So, and don't forget also that the MacBook Air was not plugged in. It was exporting on battery. So this little 10-minute clip, the MacBook Air exported it in 4 minutes 20, or just over 4 minutes 20. The iMac exported it in 4 minutes and 2, and the M4 Pro Mac Mini exported it in 3 minutes 40. All those figures are fairly close together, but to that point, I just wanted to say to you, that's why you don't need to change unnecessarily. Unless your workflow has really expanded since you bought your last MacBook Air, there's no need to be changing. Look how well this M3 MacBook Air coped with that little video export. Save your money and cherish what you've got. Hopefully you're enjoying this video, and if you are, there's all sorts of things you can do just to help support the channel and make it grow. The most obvious of those is to get subscribed and turn on notifications so you know the moment I upload one of my weekly videos. Also, just so we can keep the chat going all week long, you get really involved in my videos. So I thought because of that, we'd start our own Discord server. I'll leave a link for that in the description. And also, I'd love for you to leave me your details on my website, talkingtechandaudio.com. And if you do that, I will send you a free video weekly newsletter every Sunday. It arrives at 2 o'clock UK, and it just tells you about what's going on in the business here, what's going on in the studio, and what I can't really talk about on those videos. So if you want to stay involved with the channel and help it to grow, I'd love to have you on board. And those are the simple things you can do to help this channel grow. So let's say you've got an older Intel or M1 MacBook Air and you're thinking now's about the right time to change. The first thing I would suggest is look into its strengths. This machine started out as an ultra lightweight portable notebook, and that is still what it's great at. I made a mistake and bought the 15-inch M3 MacBook Air, and I wouldn't make that mistake again. If I'm away from the studio and up in London carrying it around all day, it's that little bit too big and that little bit too heavy. Look, if I'm in the studio and I've got the 13-inch MacBook Air, I can easily hook it up to external displays. We've covered that already. And if you're away from your desk, it's going to be that much lighter and that much more portable. Lean in to its USP. Don't be spending a fortune on Apple storage either. You don't need to. You've got Thunderbolt 4 on here. Buy some external SSD storage. Now, I know it's not quite as convenient on a laptop to have external SSDs hanging outside, but you won't need it plugged in all the time. But equally, when you do need it, it's there and it's so much more affordable. Also, when it comes to memory, although you could get away with the 16 gigs, and it will do most people just for future-proofing you, and an applesilicon Mac should easily last you for 4 or 5 years, I'd recommend going for that mid-tier, go for 24 gigs of memory. I've learned that the only pinch point with applesilicon is how much memory you've got on it. So try and go for that mid-range, 24 gigs and 512 gigs of SSD storage. Buying that 512 not only gives you extra storage, but it also gives you other performance boosts as well. So my sweet spot would be 512 gigs of SSD, 24 gigs of memory. And if you buy that Mac, 13-inch MacBook Air, it's going to cost you £1,199. And that's very, very, very nearly a bargain. As I said, Apple never goes chasing the bargains. But when you consider what you're getting for your money, that Retina display, a great keyboard, trackpad, speakers, we'll forget the camera, it's a great machine to buy and almost a bargain. So who are these MacBook Airs really aimed at the moment? Pretty much everybody. They are so powerful. There's nothing realistically in day-to-day life you can't do with one of these MacBook Airs. Just get those specs right early on and it will last you for years. So if you're a student, a business owner, a writer, a creative, we saw by just adding a simple dock to it, the kind of features that you could unlock. Honestly, these MacBook Airs, do not be put off by the name. They are a serious contender and probably the star, I reckon, of the current Mac lineup, and certainly the nearest you get to a genuine bargain from Apple. I mentioned earlier on that there were two things that they could have included on the M4 MacBook Air that probably would have convinced me that it was time to change, and that would be nano texture. Now, I don't like nano texture on the iPad because it kills off the OLED screen too much, in my opinion, but on a MacBook Air that's being used out of the office and in daylight more often, I think nano texture would have been fantastic, and also going hand in glove with that, a bit more brightness. If it had 1,000 nits of brightness and nano texture, I think then I probably would have bought one. But that's me being really, really picky. Now, I mentioned earlier on that the MacBook Air was my first ever Mac. My second Mac and my first desktop Mac was an iMac. And the video that you're about to watch now will tell you why I still love working on iMacs.